Caddis Maximus here, this time with a quick review of the Harbor Freight 1/4-inch hex hand impact driver. So this is a hand impact driver, just like others you may have seen, but those are usually related to sockets, like normal socket hand impact drivers like one of these. This is just a compact version that was sold by Harbor Freight. And I need to be more clear in my reviews, is Harbor Freight, somewhere between 10 and 20% of their tools, I would say, in any given year, maybe it's not that high of a percentage, are fixed purchase tools, kind of like Costco. They'll buy a certain amount of them and then sell them. And then if there isn't enough demand, they won't purchase another batch of them. And actually, for several years, they did have this hand impact driver, and I recently noticed I couldn't find it on their website, and I couldn't find another one in their stores. So hopefully they haven't discontinued this unit. But they just may not have sold enough of them. What I really like about it is, of course, it is one of those hammer-type hand impact drivers. And when you're working with screws, they're really handy because you're getting a ton of downward force while applying a twisting motion with the impact. And that's the difference that would be had between this and, say, an electric impact driver or an air ratchet with the appropriate, or excuse me, an air impact wrench with the appropriate adapters, is because even though, like electrics, they do have a little bit of forward motion or energy, almost all of it's for twisting, where this, a lot of energy is into forward action. And if you work particularly on motorcycles, there'll be a lot of Phillips head fasteners where this would just be an extremely handy unit. And so it's kind of unfortunate that it's getting harder to find, but maybe I'm just having a hard time locating it. Because it used to be called a reversible impact screwdriver. So a couple things I do like about this Harbor Freight. It does take a just standard 1/4-inch hex. It's a really tightly machined, which I appreciate. And then the steel band, it uses a ball detent to hold it in instead of like a little spring clip inside or a magnet, which I appreciate. And they use a super heavy-duty clip. As a matter of fact, if you put in a 1-inch bit, you usually can't get enough grip to get it out without actually using some pliers to yank it out. And to show you what I mean, let me clean this up just a little bit here. This is a real premium DeWalt impact bit. And if I can find the surface where there it is. See where the little ball detent was? That's actually a deeper scratch than it looks like on the camera. It really holds in solid. You absolutely cannot pull out the bits with your fingers. But that's a good thing because they hold in real well. Another thing I like, there's a big difference in how a lot of these kind of hand impact drivers work. A lot of them will have free play when they're in the extended position, which makes it kind of difficult to use because you have to apply continuous tension before you hit it. And a lot of times it's hard to watch where you're hitting with the hammer and then remember to keep good tension. And that kind of technique where you have to apply tension before you hit it with the hammer kind of sets you up for a bad situation because you're not just focusing on holding it into the fastener nice and square. I can say that this Harbor Freight, when it's in the extended position, has almost no free play. So I do appreciate that. When you do impact it, it does take a little bit of time to engage, and it is a ball bearing style, and I'll take it apart to show you. But when you do press it in, it'll hit, and then it'll rotate. And because it's a ball bearing system, it's actually really, really smooth. Even with the coarse machining, it's still a ball bearing. So it runs smoothly and delivers the force actually quite smoothly. And I've had a pretty high degree of success. Now, it's actually pretty easy to, some of these are very difficult to take apart, and they use a different system. Like this snap-on here uses a solid through pin and a different kind of drive system. And what makes a difference there is not only does it not have any free-floating play, actually zero in an extended position, but soon as you start to press it in, it starts turning. But it's almost impossible. The spring in the snap-on's ridiculous. So on this one, it has just a couple little snap rings. They're not even snap rings. They're just, spring clips, and they snap into a couple grooves. Those grooves hold on this metal collar, which I kind of liked. I thought it was a feature for you to hold it or maybe just get it balanced and hold it by the collar when you're hitting it so it can spin more freely. Although the handle really doesn't spin that much, I thought that was a nice feature, but then I got to thinking maybe that was an assembly deal, and so it actually is. And so if we pull off this steel collar, what we have in there is our ball bearing. That's actually what guides and runs the anvil as well as holds it together. So if we just release it, there's our little ball, and then out will come our anvil. and then the heavy duty spring. And that's just a forward spring. I like that it's actually retained on a, it's just a post right there. It isn't actually like tapered to snap it in, but then there's the simple groove, and that's how it works. So when you hammer, let's get that back in there. Let's get the spring off. Easier to operate. So when you're hammering on it, the actual handle is pressing down on the ball bearing and forcing the bearing to go up this little slot here till it reaches the point in which it bottoms out. And on this style where you have to press it in to reverse it, what you're doing is you're just pressing it in far enough for the ball to clear that V groove. And you can see that's actually not the prettiest machining that I've ever seen inside that slot, but that is a complicated shape to cut in the end of one of these anvils, particularly because they have to be hardened steel to take the impact loads. And being Harbor Freight, it's not the best quality. It is a nice solid steel handle. It does have a lot of mass on the end, but you can see the biggest defect here is it looks like they got the chamfer wrong, but actually the chamfer is really nice and easy, which means that this bar, when it was put into the stock and drilled out, was pretty badly off-center. But it doesn't affect its operation. It's only something you notice if you're really looking carefully at it. I have looked online. There's a lot of other manufacturers of these style of 1/4-inch hex hand impact drivers, but I just wanted to bring my impression of my experience in this particular unit being a Harbor Freight. I really appreciate everybody watching. Please subscribe. Catus Maximus out.